It's 1980. It's the Long Good Friday, because today's Friday. So the previous film that I did was The Long Kiss Goodnight. This is The Long Good Friday, because it's Friday. And it's a superb film, 1980. It's a gangster film set in London, particularly the area that would shortly become London's Docklands, which is where I live, where I am at this moment. It was finished in 1979, but it's thought of as an 80s film because there were delays, production delays and other delays that took it to 1980 for release, and it portrayed much of the changes that would come later in the 80s. So people think of this as an 80s film. At this time, incidentally, the Docklands had lain derelict for 10 years because the last of the ships had stopped coming in toward the late 1960s due to containerisation of cargo. The plot is complex and interweaving. Harold Shand, a London crime boss, is wanting to appear as a legit businessman, so he enters into a property deal with the American mafia, as you do, to redevelop London Docklands. Now, Shand is seen at the start of the film presenting a deal to people gathered on a boat as it makes its way down the Thames. His speech on the boat about how Great Britain is a major player in the EEC and the opportunities that this will present in the 80s, that cleverly frames as it's shot, it cleverly frames his head and shoulders with Tower Bridge around him, just to push the point home. Now, after the boat presentation, he learns about an explosion which kills one of his men, then the murder in the swimming baths, and shortly a bomb in one of his nightclubs, so not having a good day. All the while, trying to keep this mayhem from his potential investment partners. Now, he has his guests driven to a pub of his, but as they approach, the upper floor explodes from a bomb. Bearing in mind this was written in 1979, so pubs exploding through, that wasn't particularly unusual. Shand is used to the London crime world, and he stays away from the world of narcotics and drug dealing. He considers that dirty. But he's at a total loss to what is happening and why and by whom, all on this one day. He absolutely did not suspect who it was. It was the IRA, the Provisional Irish Republican Army. It's the world totally alien to him, and until now he thought he had no connection with it at all. He also completely underestimates what kind of a threat they are to him. Now, in reality, what was to happen a couple of years after this film was set was the formation of LDDC, the London Docklands Development Corporation. It was a quango with powers to acquire and dispose of land in the area and as a planning authority. This rode over the top of the problem of the many and varied landowners in this area. The area was designated an enterprise zone, giving property tax exemptions, simplified planning, capital allowances and other laws. And I have first-hand experience of some of those. And ironically, much of the development was by the sort of legitimate business people that Harold Shand fictionally portrays. This shot here, by the way, where they're standing, is now where London City Airport is. And every morning I go and cycle down there. I'm on the opposite side. So this is Royal Albert Dock. This shot here is what will become Canary Wharf. The film was directed by John Mackenzie, who'd worked a lot on television, particularly plays and dramas, and as such had a fairly concentrated, the whole film has got a very concentrated and dense televisual feel to it. The script was by Barry Keefe, who wrote it in only a few days over an Easter holiday. Keefe had worked as a journalist before and had first-hand experience of some of the types of violence presented in this film. He also knew of the undercurrent of energy at that time, money changing hands in town halls, secretive development opportunities for the future Docklands. He and Barry Hanson, the producer, when they were researching this in 1977, they got some headed paper printed and said that they wanted to invest in Docklands, and suddenly they had an awful lot of material turning up in the post. He said you could sense something enormous was about to happen. So there was this undercurrent of pent-up investment energy about to be released. And bearing in mind this film was released in 1979, 1980, but Margaret Thatcher wasn't in power until later that year, the September of that year. The scene where all the underworld figures are rounded up in a meat van and railed into an abattoir, cinematographer Phil Mayhew said, "Hang me upside down as well," because they hung all the underworld figures upside down as Harold Chan was going to basically grill them. And he said, hang me upside down as well. So he took a handheld cine camera and he shot the view from upside down of himself hanging upside down. But it's like the birds, it's like the point of view of the people hanging upside down as they were pushed down the rails after. The filming throughout is superb, by the way. The final scene in the film was actually the first to be shot. John Mackenzie, the director, talking Bob Hoskins through a sequence of thought and emotions about how that day had panned out and all the ramifications coming home to him. Bob Hoskins doesn't say a word in that final scene. It's just facial expressions, and it's really well done. Now, the ramifications just show on his face and the reality of the situation he now finds himself in, all without a word being spoken. John shouted out the different emotions while he was being filmed in the... Bob was being filmed in the car, and Bob was being filmed from the position that the young Pierce Brosnan occupied in the car when it's all edited together, and they never actually saw each other. The music of the film is, well, striking, so powerful, so in your face, so strident, so audacious. It's one of the things that makes this film very television-like. Francis Monkman's score is very modern. Monkman in 1970 formed the prog rock band Curved Air, and then by 1979 joined the band Sky. And the music is such an important part of this film, equal to the script or the casting or the camera work. If you don't like gangster films, if you don't like really violent films, I still recommend you watch this and just pretend that you were directing it, pretend that you were the camera person, pretend that you were thinking about the music, pretend that you were editing it. It's such a good film. Plus, it portrays very, very accurately what was about to happen in the 80s, and not by accident either. The Long Good Friday, 1980. Thank you very much.